Hey guys, and welcome back to the Primal Shift podcast. In the second episode, I'd like to talk about the 8 key primal shifts or core principles, as I've called them in the past, that I think make up a healthy lifestyle. And a lot of people think that, they just have to exercise enough or eat well or do this or that, and they're going to be fine. But the truth is, we need to cover a lot of different angles, a lot of different areas to make sure that we thrive and that our health is optimal. And so into this episode, we're going to give you an overview of those 8, and then we're going to dive into more details over the next couple of episodes. Now, before we start, I'd like to remind you that please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, on Shopify, leave a 5-star review if you think it's worth it, because it helps a lot to help other people get this, or help me get discovered, and for other people to help find this podcast. It's a very competitive environment out there, as I'm sure you can imagine. And so every review, every subscription really helps to tell Apple, hey, this is a podcast that other people should see as well and listen to as well. So thank you very much in advance for helping out there. Now, let's talk about those 8 primal shifts or core principles. Number 1 I'd like to talk about is sleep. Sleep is the foundation of everything. And I like to say that if you don't sleep well, nothing else matters. That's obviously not entirely true, because everything else certainly does matter. But optimal health is very difficult to achieve if your foundation is off. And sleep is the foundation. If you wake up already not rested, if you didn't give your body enough chance to recover and restore, consolidate memories and all of those things, then there is no way you can perform physically or mentally optimally the next day. So sleep is incredibly important, and getting good night's rest seems to be unobtainable for many people. But there are actually just a few things that we're going to address in more detail over the next couple of episodes that you can do to improve your sleep, to normalize your sleep, and to just sleep well. Because guess what? Humans have slept well for most of our history. Good sleep is not something that needs to be trained, that's impossible to achieve. It's the default state. Unfortunately, for many of us, we are so out of whack with how we should be that sleeping well is difficult. But just a few pointers that can help you really dial in your sleep. One is consistent sleep and wake time. And that's probably the most challenging part for a lot of people because of family life and work and all of those things. But that's really one of the easiest hacks or most effective hacks, is to just go to bed roughly at the same time and get up roughly at the same time. Expose yourself to sunlight. That's one of the other things that has helped a lot of people by just exposing themselves to natural light. All of that goes back to normalizing your circadian rhythm, supporting your circadian rhythm, and that makes sleeping much easier. Number 2, nutrition. Obviously, that's one of the core areas of my blog and YouTube channel, is how to eat like a human. Eat in a way that's conducive to our genetic makeup, to our physiology, to our digestive system. The problem is there is so much conflicting information out there with, today a study says this, tomorrow the study says something different. And is, more plants, eat your veggies, more meat causes cancer, meat causes, high cholesterol. There is just so much information out there and nothing seems to be making sense. And so, looking back in human history and say, what have humans eaten for most of evolution? And you'll realize that you don't need a study to tell you that eating predominantly animals is probably a good thing. That, eat some plants, that's probably okay too. Do we need plants? No, there is nothing in there that we need. That doesn't mean we can't have them if we know how to prepare them properly. That goes back to, as Dr. Bill Schindler said, eat like a human. Humans have learned how to process and prepare certain foods to make them more compatible with our physiology. So I'm not telling you have to be a carnivore, and I'm certainly not telling you have to be a vegan. But there are certain guiding principles that we'll talk about in the next few episodes that can help you figure out what you should be eating predominantly and how to listen to your body to figure out if something sits well with you or it doesn't. At the end of the day, if you feel well, then probably you're doing something right. If you don't feel well, maybe, you're not doing something right. You're doing something wrong. Physical activity and exercise, incredibly important for a number of reasons. Not to lose weight or to maintain weight or to out exercise a poor diet. That's not the point of exercise. The point of exercise is to challenge your body, to put it under stress, because only certain stressors will help your body become more resilient. That's one of the reasons why even astronauts, in space, they work out, they do weight training, resistance training, because otherwise their bones, their bone mass would shrink, their muscles would atrophy, because the body says, hey, I don't need to bear any weight, so we don't need that strong skeleton. We don't need those strong bones or those muscles. What for? We are weightless, And so the same applies here on Earth. We need to challenge our body to either grow, our bones to become more dense, our muscles to become bigger, to help us move and do the things we need to do. And that's one of the reasons why exercise is so important as a hormetic stressor. Speaking of stress, obviously, stress is sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. Chronic stress, most definitely not so good. One of the issues really is in our brain cannot necessarily differentiate between something that's life-threatening, because that's one of the reasons why we have a stress response to help us survive in case there is a saber-toothed tiger trying to eat us, or if we need to run after a mammoth and try to kill it. There is a reason for why we have a sympathetic branch of our nervous system. But there is also the issue of our modern lives that get in the way and trigger that sympathetic response constantly. Every financial issue, every time the kids cry, every time there is, your boss annoys you, we go into sympathetic mode much more often and more consistently than we've ever done as part of human evolution. And that causes issues. And so we have to learn how to deal with stress, how to become more resilient to stress triggers, and how to downregulate our nervous system. That's also one of the things that I'm very much looking forward to sharing more details on. Environmental toxins, that's a big one. That's, I think, one of the most challenging one for us here in the Kummer household, to reduce our exposure to environmental toxins from personal care products, from food storage containers, from tap water, from paint in the house, from furniture. I mean, the table I'm using here has probably been stained with something that off-gassed, hopefully a long time ago and not anymore. But all of those things are toxic to our body, and we are exposing ourselves to all of those things every single day in amounts that's unprecedented in human evolution. And so that's another way where I can share tips with you on how you can dramatically reduce your exposure and reap the benefits of that in the long run. Hormesis is another thing that I maybe just 2 or so years ago started exploring more. And hormesis basically means exposing yourself to hormetic stressors that make you more resilient. What doesn't kill you make you stronger, I'm sure you've heard. And that principle applies not so much to chronic stress, because chronic stress doesn't make you stronger, it makes you sick. But intentional stressors, be it hot exposure, cold exposure, so sauna bathing, cold plunging, exercise for that matter, those things are hormetic stressors that can cause a response in your body that make you more resilient and stronger. And those are incredibly important. And that's why when someone says, oh, but I don't want to, cold shower, why would I do that? It just feels uncomfortable. Well, sometimes, ideal health is about feeling uncomfortable for a certain time. And, we'll talk about more that in a dedicated episode, but that's a super interesting area as well that I'm very passionate about. Belonging and tribalism, number 7. That's something we often ignore, especially in the last, I think, 3 years or so as part of the, that health issue everyone seemed to be having. We became more isolated, and there are a lot of people that say, oh, I just do what I want, I want to be myself because I don't want anyone to tell me what I can do and not do. And I feel that because I'm very much at heart a libertarian soul. Like, leave me alone. I do what I think is best and I leave you alone, kind of. But at the same time, I've realized that humans are not meant to be alone. They're not meant to be isolated. We thrive in a tribe of ideally like-minded people, and sometimes, opinions that differ, but that we can figure out as a tribe, as a community. And so we've really been trying to make connecting with others, sharing what we know, hearing their point of view and their opinions, and trying to see the positive of having a community and, just try to ignore some of the things that don't work out. I mean, there are certain things that I can't look past, and as we cannot be part of the same tribe, but in many areas, it feels so good to have help. And we've come to appreciate that even more because, my wife and I and the kids, we are here in the US, my family is in Austria, my wife's family is in Costa Rica. So we are alone, family-wise. And whenever we need help, with the kids or whatever, if, my wife and I want to have a date, we need to, pay someone or ask a friend. Fortunately, that now we've built a network of friends that can help out, but you can't do it alone. And the more and more we get into, farming and raising some of our own food, the more we realize you cannot run a farm by yourself and, do podcasts and write blog posts and record YouTube videos. All of those things require a group of people, a support net at the end of the day. And that's why belonging and tribalism are so important. And number 8, reconnecting with nature. We are all in our bubble, in our offices, in our, homes, climate controlled under artificial light. And sometimes, there days go by and we are not out in nature. When was the last time, you stood out in the rain and just let the rain, pour on you and appreciate how it feels when you get soaking wet, or when you walk barefoot in the grass? How does it feel? Or on gravel, or on the forest floor or whatever. All of those things are super important to us because that's what humans have been exposed to for such a long time, for millions of years. We walked barefoot, exposed to the elements, to hot and cold and everything in between. And so we need that to a degree. It doesn't mean you have to run around a loincloth barefoot, and go to the office. But, try to make this part of your routine, walk out barefoot. If you have a patch of grass or soil, without concrete, just walk barefoot, ground a little bit, feel how it feels, be exposed to the sun without sunscreen and to the rain without wearing a raincoat. So all of those things are super important that I'm super excited to talk about to you over the next couple of episodes. But before we wrap it up today, again, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. But I also want to talk about real quick MK supplements, which to a degree pays for what I'm doing here. So I'm very appreciative of all of your support already, but I have a special discount, Primal Shift, code Primal Shift, one word, for 15% off MK supplements. I think they're among the finest organ meat supplements on the market, whole food type of, I wouldn't even call them supplements. There's freeze-dried whole food, freeze-dried organs from 100% grass-fed, grass-finished, regeneratively raised New Zealand cattle in a capsule. So very easy to consume, very convenient for the kids, for the entire family, for the pets for that matter. And so a very good product, I think, obviously, because otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. But if you want to give them a try, and I would highly appreciate it, Primal Shift, 15% off on shop.michaelkummer.com. And with that, we're going to wrap it up, and I'll see you in the next episode.